Good evening. I trust you've had a fruitful day. I do not say happy, but I hope it has been happy. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the Buddha, the blessed, noble, and fully self-awakened one. I've been put on to a discourse by Nori, and it involves a woman. Now, you might think, why haven't I included women? Well, it's not been my main focus, whether it's a man or a woman, but more the teachings. But unfortunately, women teachers in the discourses are few and far between. It's the age. We can put it down to the age. So let me tell you something about Dhammadina. Dhammadina was an eminent Teri, so she was an elder of the bhikkhunis, the nuns, ranked foremost among nuns with who possessed the gift of preaching. She was the wife of Visakha of Rajagaha, Rajgir. Remember, that's where King Bimbisara lived. And when he, having heard the Buddha preach, became an anagami, in other words, having heard the Buddha preach, he reached the third level of liberation. She left the world with the consent of her husband, who sent her to a nunnery in a, in a golden palanquin. There we are. Now that's respect for you. Dwelling in solitude, she soon attained arahatship, and she later returned to Rajagaha to worship the Buddha, and there Visakha asked her questions on the Dharma, which she answered as easily as one might cut the low stalk with a knife. Questions and answers are given, so that's what we're going to have a look at tonight. Now, here's a little bit of the mythical age. In the time of Padumuttara Buddha, so we're talking eons ago, she was a servant, and one day saw the Buddha's disciple, Sujata, begging alms and gave him curry. Her master, seeing this, made her his daughter-in-law, and later, while on a visit to the vihara, she saw a nun declared to be a chief of preachers and wished for a similar eminence. And even before that, in the time of Pussa Buddha, she obtained merit by giving the Buddha's half-brother double the gift prescribed by her husband. And in the time of Kassapa Buddha, she was born as Sudama, the sixth of 7 daughters of Kiki, king of Benares. For 20,000 years, she lived in celibacy. There we are. Now, let's get to these questions. Oh, my goodness. Just looking at the light. Seems all right. Yeah. This discourse is called the shorter series of questions and answers. And it's her husband, actually, who's coming to ask questions. So she's been given the name of foremost in preaching or teaching by the Buddha. And this, again, is in Rajgir or Rajagaha, present-day Rajgir, which was the seat of Bimbisara, king of Magadha. So he approaches her and says, "Lady, personality. What is personality called by the Blessed One?" Now, we've done this, so this is a little test. I'm going to repeat that again, and I'm going to give you a few seconds to decide what it is. All right? So personality. What is called personality by the Blessed One? These 5 aggregates affected by clinging are called personality by the Blessed One. That is the body, feeling, perception, habits, formations, mental, volitional formations, habits, and consciousness, all of them affected by clinging. Now, if you got that, you can give yourself a score of 2. If you sort of got close to it, 1. If you didn't get it at all, 0. So now what he's saying here, of course, personality is, of course, identity. So it's the aggregates that are affected by clinging. Clinging is just a way of saying that association of me, of the self. This is me, okay? I am my body, I am my feelings, I am what I think, I am what I do, and I am my consciousness of all this, okay? So that's identity. So then he goes on, he says that Visakha, a former husband, was delighted and rejoiced. And then he asked a further question. Lady, what is the origin of personality according to the Buddha? Okay, 3 seconds. What is the origin of personality according to the Buddha? It is craving, which brings renewal of becoming, is accompanied by delight and lust, and delights in this and that. That is craving for sensual pleasures, craving for becoming, and craving for non-becoming. This is called the origin of personality by the Buddha. Now, if you got that, give yourself 2. If you got close to it, 1. And if you didn't, 0. So here we have craving. So this is that tanha, that wrong desire based on a wrong understanding that true happiness can be found in the sensual world. And we have the 2, and we have the 3 cravings, right? The one is for just pleasure, just the ordinary pleasures of life, however you might describe that. But then there's this craving also to keep living, to keep becoming, right? And remember the craving not to become. So that is also part of our ability to zonk out when we're a bit depressed or we don't want to be around, and we just, do the duvet dive or just lie out on the couch. At worst, of course, it's suicide. So there we have it. So personality is caused by identity with the 5 aggregates, this psychophysical organism. And the cause of that is craving, or this wrong desire. And so now we have another question. Cessation of personality. What is called cessation of personality or personhood by the Blessed One? Okay, you've got 3 seconds. It is the remainderless fading away and ceasing, the giving up, relinquishing, letting go, and rejecting of that same craving. This is called the cessation of personality or personhood. Now, if you got that, give yourself 2. And if you got close to it, 1. And if you didn't get it at all, 0. One hard. So what we're looking at, of course, are the 4 Noble Truths, yeah? Okay, this is an easy one. Lady, the way leading to the cessation of personality, the cessation of personhood. So this is the 4 Noble Truths based upon the idea of a self. What is that called? What is called the way leading to the cessation of personality? Now, I've given it away, so you must get that one right. I don't want anybody to go with complete 0. Right? What is the way leading to the cessation of personality? Yeah. It is just this noble 8-fold path: right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. So if you got that, give yourself 2. If you sort of got it, 1. But I don't think anybody's not got it. I'll be very surprised. Dreadful. Now, here's the tricky one. Okay, this is when it gets a wee bit careful. Now it gets a bit tricky. Okay, so now, is that clinging? So this is the self, the identity. The same as the 5 aggregates affected by clinging, or is the clinging something apart from the 5 aggregates affected by clinging? Is it the same, or is it something separate? What do you think? This is Dhammadina's answer. That clinging is neither the same as the 5 aggregates affected by clinging, nor is clinging something apart from the 5 aggregates of clinging. It is the desire and lust in regard of the 5 aggregates affected by clinging that is the clinging here or there. So, see if we can deconstruct that. The clinging is neither the same, right? So in what way is it the same, all right? It's the same because of that identity. When we talk about identity, we mean a loss of objectivity. It's like, this is what I am. At its most obvious way would be when we get completely lost in an emotion. When, you know, we are the anger, or we are the joy, or the excitement. That's what we mean by identity. So in that sense, it's the same. But it is apart because it cannot arise without the 5 aggregates. In other words, there's no clinging, there's no self unless there are 5 aggregates. So therefore, and of course, it is a consequence of this desire, this deluded desire to seek happiness in the sensual world. So it is, although it is the same, it is something else, because it doesn't arise if there's no clinging, right? If there's no wrong understanding through desire, the self doesn't, this clinging self doesn't arise. So that was a bit tricky, wasn't it? So I didn't put that to you as a, there's no marks for that one, unless you actually knew it. So you can add up your score now. You should have 6 or 4 or at least 2. So you can pat yourself on the back. Okay, now the next bit gets even more complicated, and I'm just wondering whether we can go for it. Well, okay, let's try. So now, how does personality view come to be? Personality view come to be, right? Now, there's a difference between the sense of self and the view of self. The view of self is the wrong understanding. The sense of self is that feeling we have of being me, okay? Here, Visakha, an untaught, ordinary person who has no regard for the noble ones and is unskilled and undisciplined in their dharma, who has no regard for true men, people, and is unskilled and undisciplined in their dharma, regards material form as self, or self as possessed of material form, or material form as in self, or self as in material form. It's a killer, isn't it? So they regards the body as the self, or the self possessing the body, or the body is in the self, or the self is in the body. Okay? Now then, there's a piece I've taken out from Análio's book. I think it's in his how to be with death and dying or something. This book about death and dying is done, which is excellent, by the way. And he points this out. The 5 aggregates of clinging represent different components of what one tends to cling to. So the physical body would be where I am. Feeling would be how I am. Perception would be what I am. The habits and everything is why I am, and consciousness whereby I am. So that's just an aside. Okay, so let's get back to this body and business. So if we do it with a body, we can do it with the other four, right? And according to the note, these are the 20 kinds of personality view. So the first one is the body and the self are one. Okay, so the commentary says it's like the flame of a burning oil lamp is identical with its color. So the body and the self are considered by the person as one of the same thing. The self possesses the body, right? The next one was, hold on, the next one was, gonna keep flashing back and forward here. The next one was the self as regards form as self, the self as possessed of. In other words, it possesses the body. So that's one of possession. I own, like when we say I have a bad knee, and this is as a tree possesses a shadow. So the self and the body are not one, but the self does own. It has a relationship of ownership. And then the next one was, got to flip back again, excuse me. Material form as in the self. The material form is in the self. So the image it gives as a scent is in the flower. As a scent is in the flower. So here, the body and the self are the same, but the self is greater, right? Is greater. The body is in the self, but the self is greater than the body. So there's still that identity, but the person feels that the self is bigger than the body, right? Is more than the body. Okay. And the last one is that the self is part of the body, isn't it? Yeah, the self is in the material body or in matter. So the image there is of a jewel in a casket, of a jewel in a casket. So the self is simply a part of the body, right? And if you think of the body, it does have its own autonomic ways of doing things, like the creation of blood and all that. So the self is, as it were, encased in the body. It's a different form of identity. So the four identities are: I am the same as, a pure identity, one of possession, separate, but the one is greater than the other. The body is greater than the self, or the self is greater than the body. Okay, it's all very confusing, don't you think? But this is the self as opposed as to the body. You can do the same with feeling. You can do the same with perceptions, and you can do the same with the habits. Yeah, and you can do the same with consciousness, and it all adds up to 5, 4, 12. What does he say? I get confused. 20 different kinds of selves. So in what way does this help us? That's the question, isn't it? I mean, well, it's a case of using it as a contemplation. And in your sitting, just ask yourself, what's this sense of self I have? What's its relationship to the body? What's its relationship to feeling, you see? Every time we're reacting, there's some sense of ownership, some sense of wanting it or not wanting it. So it's a case of using these reflections, these understandings, to actually view our relationship to the body, to our feelings, to the way we think, to all our habits, and to consciousness itself. Yeah. So I think it might be worth going over that sometime or other. So I can only hope these words have truly not been confusing, and that it will assist you in your journey to final liberation, which will come hopefully sooner rather than later. So we can begin our practice.